All right, so what we're gonna do today, real quickly, is kind of go over how I did my front foot pad sensor swap setup to have a concave using the Float Life Kush High. So I actually did two methods. One is an overlay. One is more of a transplant. So I'll show off both. I did the overlay first, with the transplant being the most recent version, and I'm still kind of trying to work out some bugs on it. All right, so there we go. Okay, so here we have the first iteration of this. It's basically your stock sensor and put with a Kush High over top. There's some double-sided tape that's similar to the stuff that you use on the GoPro mounts. That's holding it down. It's basically a strip going all the way around about half the width of the actual tape. And then there's like a box created about from here to about here on each side of the foot pad. And that allows for your sensor engagement. Otherwise, if you don't have it, it's pretty spotty and doesn't really work very well. So I have this kind of disassembled right now because I was working on it last night, waiting for some of the silicone to cure. But basically, this is a stock Kush, just the normal one. All I've done is I added a small bead of silicone on the back side. That's just to help with weatherproofing. So right now, I actually have this plugged in to my XR, and you'll see, let me just back up the XR a bit, that when I have one side on, it engages, and then the other side as well. So it's fully functional. All it is basically the same as doing a sensor swap. But instead of a swap from where you traditionally use a V1 foot pad, I'm still using the XR sensor. And all I've done really is I've mounted it to the sheet of Kydex. It's about a 16th of an inch. I think about a 16th, maybe a 16th of 1/8 inch thick. I don't remember exactly. It doesn't really matter. I wouldn't go to like a 1/32, but I would say 1/16 is probably about your sweet spot because it's not going to add more thickness than you need. So previous iteration, what I did is along here, to tape up the edges I did use a double-sided tape. It was like double-sided duct tape, and I put 2 layers on. What I found was that for a normal heel lift, it was fine, but I found that when riding the XR in my daily commute, I essentially ghosted and had runaway boards if I tried to do like a variation of the quick stop with just taking my foot off completely off the sensor. When that happened, it didn't spring back or something fast enough. So it just thought my foot was still there on the foot pad and it would just keep running. So that's why I kind of made this iteration of the sensor transplant. And the main difference is that I've used silicone to make my gasket. This is one of the methods that I outlined in a Reddit post as an option to do. And actually, this is probably a better option and probably the way I should have done it, because it allows you to swap out from using normal Kush to, say, a Kush High if you want. I also think that it's possible to use a standard foot pad, a standard front foot pad, or a standard rear foot pad, using this method with just adding, like, say, another bead of silicone here and here, or like some kind of double-sided tape. And that's just so that if you take, say, like the stock foot pad, and I have one somewhere, not with me right now, but let's say if you take a rigid foot pad that will not flex, just putting the weight down should engage it that way onto this transplanted sensor. So you should still be able to get your heel side, toe side activations and disengagements as well. Just I'm not completely certain if it will happen or not. Theoretically, it should work if depending on how you put out contact strips to engage the sensor. But basically, all this is here is a bead of silicone, about, I don't know, somewhere between a 16th to an eighth of an inch. It's not a pretty bead because I'm basically hand squeezing out through a silicone tube like this. Sure, you could probably use a caulk gun or something, or like caulk to do it. But that's fine. Like however you want to do it is fine. Even if you wanted to use double-sided tape, it would work well too. It's just that when you use double-sided tape, depending what kind you use and how adhesive it is, you may end up destroying the work you've done, and it may not, it will not have, say, like an interchangeable setup like how this is set up right now. Some other things I've done in this is that I have done the badger proofing or the badger wheel, whatever it is called, waterproofing. But because of this setup, it's not really all of it fully applicable to the footpad stuff. So what I've done is I've also done like beads of caulk on the box here and along my rail, along the front of my bumper to help give me that waterproofing. There's also some caulk left, silicone on the underside. So this should be, fairly waterproof for whatever you come across. So one of the things I did want to do is set up to make it a little bit more finished looking, kind of cleaning up these caulk beads. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to tape this up later and put some RTV to fill in this gap between what would be here and say like the foot pad. So it's all black or something to clean it up. But yeah, I mean, it works completely fine. Let me put it back together. And I mean, the only other thing you might run across is like needing to replace screws for longer screws. I think that's like the only other thing I ran into. But if you have, like, because you bought another, like Kush High, you get the extra screws. One thing to note is that in the stock XR setup, these two screws here are actually used. They're not empty. I took these screws out and then drilled the holes to match as well. I know it's relatively straightforward. I'm not going to go over how to do the sensor transplant because other people have made V1 sensor swap videos and it's kind of beating a dead horse. Basically, the quick version is you throw your whole stock sensor into an oven, bake it for about a couple minutes at like 275 or something, peel it off. And I peeled it off in one piece. So that's actually this plastic protective sheet here, and then the actual sensor sheet here. So I did it as one piece. I started at the rear and pulled it up and pried it up. I wouldn't go too extreme with an angle that you pull it up, but like no more than say 45 degrees and it'll work fine. And then it's just a matter of sticking it on the shiny side of Kydex after, you've drilled out your holes first, cut out a notch for running the cable. An alternative to doing this and kind of locks you in to one foot pad is putting the sensor right down onto the bottom of like the Kush. You can do it. I don't think it's as responsive, but I never fully mounted it up, so it may actually work for you. And then all you're going to do is really just like put a bead of silicone or something or tape just around the edges again, and for your waterproofing, and you should be fine. You would need to, right here's the actual connector. I have it buried in silicone. It's just when you go to connect this, flip the connections around. And that way your app setting will be the same, as your standard Goofy. Yeah. All right, let me go put this back together real quick and I'll show you that it still works. All right, so I got to put it back together now, and you can see when I activate on that side, the light brightens, so it went on, and also on the other side. One thing to notice and keep in mind is when you're tightening, especially these two screws here, and the ones holding your front up there. Right now I got Fang Minis on there. But when you're tightening those screws, especially these two, these four, you need to be really careful. And what I would say is actually before you even jump on the board, tighten these screws down and in the app, and watch it in the app. And not only in the app, but watch your lights. Because what you'll see is that you may tighten these screws down, and then in the app, it may not register that the sensor is in contact. But if you watch the light, it will get brighter and saying that there's contact. So I think the sensors are actually working on like an inverted resistance logic or something. So that like right now there's infinite resistance because the circuit's open. But as you close it and say put just enough pressure, it closes the circuit enough and creates a higher amount of resistance than say stomping on it with like the full area of the one sensor. So I think there's a variance in resistance, and based on the amount of resistance that the board registers, will vary between what the app reports and what lights up. I mean, I don't think it's really say like a Bluetooth delay between the board and the app, because I've tried it with maintaining that amount of pressure and it doesn't register in the app. So I think there's actually kind of like logic built into the amount of resistance. But so it will work both ways. So like the heel lift right now will work. That's not the reason why I redid it. It's because of trying to do the slow quick stop. And I'll show you that the normal heel lift and everything works fine, hopefully without killing myself in my laundry room. So basically, I'm just gonna once again test, make sure that left and right side sensors work. They both do. For both when I have engagement. Alright. So initializing the board is fine. Heel lift is fine. It's just that when I commute, I basically do a version of the quick stop where I just take my foot off completely and the board may run away from me. And I don't want to like it. Okay, so the board shut off, that's fine. I'm fine with the half second of it'll spin, because that's pretty normal for me. But like that I was not getting in the past when I used the double-sided tape. And I mean, it was double-sided duct tape. There's like minimal thickness to it. It's not like your GoPro mounting tape. That I would use without hesitation. But I was kind of trying to be cheap and so here, tightening it, it's too tight. It set off the light, so I want to back it off. All right, and then I'm going to repeat that on the other side. this side doesn't want to do it. Okay, so that's good. And so kind of what you saw with just tightening these is that's one of the reasons why I have some extra gloves, more silicone around the holes, to kind of help reduce this. Especially because these fangs like to be a little tighter, needing more torque. So like this one could be a problem, where I may need more silicone. Whereas this one is pretty tight. It could be tighter, but it's tight enough. There's enough torque there. I'm not super worried about these. But yeah. So, I mean, I could go back and just add more silicone around the tops, where those cutouts are, but you're already limited pretty much with what room you have. And then it makes this gap horrendous. It's kind of like what I want to fill in. But not a big deal. I mean, I know it's weatherproof. I've actually ridden this setup already. Yesterday, yeah, Friday, to and from work, and it was wet. I don't have any issues. Alright, so I'm almost done finishing editing the video to go post it up on YouTube. It's relatively straightforward. It sounds more complicated than it is. I know the kind of worrisome, sketchy part is essentially destroying a $150 piece if you're to order it from Onewheel. That's how much it costs to get a new sensor. But you have to remember also the front foot pads, the sensors there are considered consumable with this like 6-month warranty or something. So, you might as well try it, especially if try practicing it or something on, say, like a foot pad that's dying, if that's what you suspect. So, you could try doing it on that new foot pad you get. It's not really hard. It's pretty easy to do, straightforward, getting it off. I mean, it's just a matter of how well you prep. Getting a piece of Kydex, marking out your holes, drilling them, making sure that you've removed all the extra shavings and stuff. And then take your time with doing the silicone. I would really recommend you probably using the silicone as the best long-term solution. But even I think using weather stripping tape, I'd probably use a silicone gasket kind of thing instead of the foam. But if you say took a 1-inch ribbon, 1-inch wide ribbon, I think that would work perfect, because then you can create your gasket and seal on the top and bottom of the Kydex between your foot pad and board, so you don't have to mess with silicone. I don't know. I mean, those are probably the top two methods I would pick, and then if you want a more, I guess, permanent solution to lock it in so you only use one foot pad, go with the double-sided tape, fill it in with some kind of more durable permanent adhesive. I don't remember the kind that I used from Loctite, but it was a Loctite construction adhesive or something that's polyurethane based, I think it was, instead of silicone. So and that's what I used on the first version of it. That works really well. It has a little bit of give as well, which is why I really wanted to use that. So in case I crash the board into something like a curb, and that adhesive will have some give between the foot pad and the stock, or the two foot pads essentially. Yeah, I mean, take your time with it. It's relatively straightforward and easy to do. And I don't really think you should be scared of doing it. It adds a lot of comfort and extra like confidence and control into it without being too crazy and still looking relatively stock. And I think that's one of the best reasons why to do it, because if you've already got, say, like a Kush or a Kush High, you're going to be familiar with what that concave already feels like. So, either get another one and do it, or, maybe if you want to try like someone else's rear foot pad, you could potentially make it work as well, as a front foot pad. I mean, try it out. Hopefully it works. I think it should. Um, but at the same time, I'm not going to go spend more money on buying another foot pad. I've bought enough. All right. So hit me up. Let me know if you have any questions. And I'll get back to you. Thanks. Bye.